Ranger Halter felt the bark of the tree trunk slamming into his back, practically knocking all the air out of his lungs as he tried desperately to slow his frantic breathing. The sound of his own panting filled him with a sudden, horrifying thought. If he could hear his own ragged breaths, then it could hear them too. He clamped a hand over his mouth, clenching his jaw shut so tightly that he thought his teeth might splinter as he pushed them together. His free hand gripped the tranquilizer gun, shuddering as the snap of a twig rang out somewhere behind him. It had caught up to him already. He could bolt, make a quick dash for a cover behind another tree, but it was close enough now that it would see him. And if it did, it would come rushing after him with a speed that even a seasoned park ranger couldn't match. As much as he tried to force himself to stay still, the petrified curiosity got the better of him. Halter peeked out from behind the tree and immediately wished he hadn't. It had all started out as what sounded like an everyday occurrence. High atop his watchtower in the Glacier National Park, Ranger Halter had been enjoying the view of Montana's Rocky Mountains, a cup of coffee from his thermos in his hand. Then the familiar squawk of his radio had cut short his appreciation of the serene scenery. Halter sighed, tossing the remaining contents of the cup over the tower's railing, wondering what kind of day he was in for as he went to answer the radio. Most of the time, things in Glacier Park were as peaceful as they looked. But the park ranger knew that staying vigilant could make all the difference when it came to finding a missing hiker in time, or the difference between deterring a group of campers away from a family of bears and having a hell of a mess to clean up. He pushed down on the button for the microphone, connected to the bulky radio that took up practically an entire desk. "Halter, thank God," came the relieved voice from the other side. "We've been trying to reach everyone, put them on alert. We've got trouble. Reports of a coyote gone feral attacking folks." "I'm on it," Halter replied, grabbing his gear from the cramped watchtower as he continued to speak into the mic. "Where did the report come in from?" "Not far from your station. I'd say about a click west from your position." Stowing his tranquilizer gun, Ranger Halter descended the ladder from his watchtower down to ground level. As a park ranger, Halter valued the environment he worked in. And as a fan of the SCP universe, we know how much you value intricate world building, or in some cases, world destroying. But either way, we couldn't be happier to introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, World Anvil. World Anvil is a comprehensive set of world building tools that not only help you craft and organize your unique setting, but also present it in a captivating manner. From wiki-like articles and interactive maps to a full-fledged RPG campaign manager and novel writing software, World Anvil has everything a world creator could dream of. World Anvil equips you with over 25 templates, prompting you to dive deeper into your creations. Enrich your content by embedding maps, images, sound effects, and even little secrets for that immersive touch. With their innovative design, you can easily visualize your world through maps, chronicle its history with timelines, and fine-tune events with intricate details. Your crafted world can be beautifully showcased on a unique homepage, inviting others to dive into your vision. Got a sudden idea while working on another? No problem. World Anvil lets you swiftly create new articles or link existing ones, ensuring you never lose track of your inspiration. But my personal favorite feature is their interactive maps. Beyond just creating and uploading your own designs, you can directly link your creations, allowing for a dynamic and engaging experience. And if you're collaborating, invite your team to refine, write, and even let your fans chip in. I'm currently working on my own interactive map of Site 17, and maybe I'll even let you see it when I'm done. But don't wait for me. Dive into World Anvil yourself and elevate your world-building game. And here's a treat. Use our link in the description to go to worldanvil.com and use the code SCP to grab a whopping 51% off any yearly subscription. Explore, create, and share with World Anvil. The sun was already starting to dip out of sight behind the trees. Pretty soon it'd be pitch black, save for the beam of his flashlight. He had to move fast. Coyotes were only known to attack humans on rare occasions. Usually they kept away, at least enough to make them a minimal risk. But waiting for him just west of the watchtower wasn't a coyote, at least not at first. Watching it from behind the tree moments later, Ranger Halter's stomach turned at the sight of the creature. It walked bipedally, like a human, but the shape was all wrong. Its legs looked broken, but that hadn't stopped it from catching up. Instead of bending at the knee, they were Z-shaped, pointing back behind the creature, then twisting back again in the opposite direction at the joint. They looked more like the legs of a dog, but they were far too big. The same could be said of the arms, bent out of shape at multiple points like its legs were. The creature was a mess of misshapen limbs. The cartilage in its ears had seemingly reformed into points, and there were claws protruding from its fingertips, practically bursting out from where a human's fingernails would be. But beneath it all, and what alarmed Ranger Holter the most, was its skin. It had darkened in patches, layers of fur sprouting over those areas, but there were still parts that remained clear, where skin, human skin, was still visible, peeling away to reveal the new fur-coated layer underneath. It looked like a grotesque accident, like something ripped straight out of an old horror movie, the kind of monster that a mad scientist would make by haphazardly splicing DNA and playing God. Holter checked the tranquilizer gun in his trembling fingers, still empty after that most recent shot. He reached for another dart, slowly sliding it into the loading mechanism and readying the pistol. It cocked and made a sound. The creature's malformed head turned, snapping directly towards the source of the noise, directly towards Holter. He turned to sprint away, trying to expand the distance between him and it. If he was too close, the dart wouldn't have enough momentum when he pulled the trigger. The toe of his boot snagged on something solid, unmoving, a root from the tree he'd been hiding behind. He felt himself tumble, landing with a hard thud against the forest floor. His gun, it had fallen from his grasp. He scrabbled around in the dirt for it, barely able to see where the tranquilizer had landed in the dark. Just as his fingertips brushed past something metal, Holter felt the force of something heavy strike his back again. This time, though, it wasn't a tree. It was the creature. It snarled, gnashing its candid jaws that were protruding out of its skull, rows of sharp teeth that had uprooted the old ones, burying themselves into the park ranger's neck and not letting go, until he'd stopped moving for good. A few short hours later, a convoy of mysterious unmarked vehicles arrived at Glacier National Park. The rest of the park rangers who had reported the strange activity were approached by shadowy figures who refused to give their names or offer up any form of identification other than just referring to themselves as experts in things like this. Not long after, none of the others would remember Ranger Holter or the incident that had led to his untimely death. After administering amnestics, it didn't take the SCP Foundation search party long to discover a lone coyote sniffing around the remains of a park ranger covered in blood. The wild animal was captured, to be brought back for testing before being re-released into the wild. Meanwhile, the Foundation scoured the rest of the area until they came across the real culprit. Standing in a clearing a short distance from a footpath through the forest was SCP-1579. Of course, the next challenge was getting it packed up and transported to Biosite 66 without touching it. To the untrained eye, SCP-1579 looks to be fairly unassuming, even as far as anomalous objects go. It is simply an old wooden sculpture, the kind that can even be occasionally found in various wooded areas throughout the world. Its age is apparent from even one cursory glance at SCP-1579. The partial damage to its cedar surface speaking to the numerous years it has existed for, along with the bright green moss that covers it. Although, curiously, this moss doesn't seem to dry out and die in responses to changes in humidity, nor does it affect SCP-1579's structural integrity. As for where it came from and who made it, those are still unknown. As if the answer to what holds SCP-1579's anomalous properties, whether or not the cedar it was carved from or the moss coating the sculpture possesses some unknown properties, or if SCP-1579 was somehow imbued with these after being created. Initial testing by the SCP Foundation's researchers determined SCP-1579 to have an abnormally high resistance to the type of damage wood, and particularly cedar wood, is susceptible to. For one, it does not seem to show any signs of rotting or natural degradation. For another, it is also resistant to heat, at least to a certain extent. It doesn't burn the same way other objects constructed from cedar wood. However, this sculpture is not entirely indestructible. Pieces can be easily chipped off of the main body of SCP-1579, and these splintered fragments continue to carry the same anomalous effects as the rest of the sculpture, even when separate from it. But of course, you want to know about the creature. How does this supposedly harmless, if a little structurally abnormal cedar wood sculpture connects to whatever it was that killed Park Ranger Holter? Well, it's quite simple actually. SCP-1579 killed Holter. Not directly, you understand, but by proxy, through its further anomalous properties. Still confused? Well then, how about a demonstration? Let's take a look at one of the Foundation's preferred test subjects, an expendable member of D-Class personnel, probably spending multiple life sentences working here at the SCP Foundation, rather than behind the bars of a maximum security institution. Now, what would happen if you place this delightful individual in the same room as SCP-1579? Well, nothing initially. That is, until the subject touches the cedar wood surface of the sculpture, either out of curiosity or following the instructions of a Foundation researcher. That's when the real anomaly starts. The wooden sculpture will exhibit a slight but observable movement, shuddering slightly as if moved by an unseen force. This will precede the person who touched the object feeling a burning sensation, that kind of irritating, painful heat that spreads underneath the surface of the skin. The burning will always begin at the area of their body that made direct contact with SCP-1579, and touching it again at any point will trigger a reactivation of the sculpture's anomalous effects. Subjects experiencing the effects of SCP-1579 have described the feeling as being akin to a bad sunburn that rapidly spreads across the skin from the point of contact, only to stop once it has affected a person's entire body. Following the subsidiance of the burning sensation, subjects experiencing the side effects of touching SCP-1579 will notice an immediate change to their skin. Within a window of 3 minutes, their skin becomes thin and paper-like in its texture, before starting to peel away. Once this stage occurs, the peeling skin will reveal a new layer underneath, hence the colloquially used codename for this anomaly, different skin. However, this so-called different skin isn't merely a new layer of otherwise ordinary human skin. Instead, it will belong to another species entirely. A person coming into contact with SCP-1579 will find themselves rapidly developing new skin that shares the physical traits, as well as matching DNA, to that of a number of animal species. It should be noted that these features will continue to rapidly develop until the subject is entirely transformed, and is no longer considered to qualify as a human being. As for the specific transformation that occurs, there are a number of known outcomes that repeat in the following cycle. Let's say our D-Class, we'll call them Subject A, touched SCP-1579 at the start of the cycle. They would, after the burning sensation stops and peeling begins, start to sprout dark feathers across their torso, arms, and upper legs, likely with a great deal of pain as the sharp quill of these feathers start to burst out from beneath the skin. Beneath the knees, Subject A will see their legs start to become yellow and scaly, as well as a change that causes their toenails to simply start to painfully protrude outwards until they form pointed, blackened talons. Subject A's face will also start to grow feathers. However, these grow outwards away from the areas of the nose and mouth. Flight feathers will also protrude from the forearms, multiplying in number until their entire body is covered, at which point Subject A, on every level including genetically, more closely resembles a Corvus corax, more commonly known as the common raven, than a human being anymore. Take another test subject, Subject B, and get them to touch SCP-1579 right after. Their different skin is covered in brown fur that's approximately 4 inches long. Their lips and skin underneath the fur will darken, and their nose will become constantly moist. Claws will start to grow from their fingertips, although these will be notably smaller than those of a fully grown creature of the same species, an Ursus arctos horribilis, or a grizzly bear. Then we get to the point in the cycle where some unwitting hiker encountered SCP-1579 in the forests of Glacier National Park, Montana. When this subject, Subject C, touched the cedar sculpture, their skin began to grow layered fur, as the cartilage of their ears is separated from their tissue and replaced by new, reshaped cartilage. Much like Subject B, who SCP-1579 turned into a grizzly bear, Subject C also had darkened skin, a moistened nose, and longer, sharper nails. It was at some point during this transformation that an unassuming park ranger stumbled upon Subject C. Frightened by what he saw, this ranger was unable to identify that what he interpreted as attacks by some kind of half-human, half-animal hybrid were actually desperate pleas for help, as Subject C was transformed into a coyote. Although it's hard to say which physiological change triggered by SCP-1579 is the most alarming or unpleasant to experience, the fourth kind is in no way any more pleasant than the preceding three in the cycle. Subject D of this particular series of tests will find the new layer of skin that emerges under the old to be hairless and of a green coloration, often with brown markings. Unlike the previous instances, their skin will rapidly begin to dry out, and seems to be far more reactive to the humidity of the surrounding environment. It is also far thinner than that of the skin possessed by other transformations that SCP-1579 causes. So thin, in fact, that the eyeballs of Subject D will be visible through its eyelids, which rapidly become translucent, similar to those of the Suracris regula, otherwise known as the Pacific tree frog. Repeated activation of SCP-1579's anomalous properties will trigger the next transformation in the cycle, whether the cedarwood sculpture is touched by a new subject or repeatedly by the same person. In the latter instance, where a subject is re-exposed to SCP-1579, the additional changes their body undergoes will be significantly more painful. Their already newly replaced outer layer of skin will fail to dry out and will begin bleeding instead. 3 or 4 consecutive exposures to SCP-1579 will lead to excessive bodily trauma for the subject, usually causing them to die from shock before the 4th transformation is complete. And as we're sure you can imagine, an amalgamation of a human, a raven, a grizzly bear, a coyote, and a tree frog is hardly a pleasant sight. This unfortunate fate was suffered during one of the first incidents with SCP-1579 that brought the Foundation's attention to it. During an elementary school field trip, a teacher who was explaining the history of totem poles in Native American culture accidentally touched SCP-1579. While experiencing the pain of her transformation, she fell against the sculpture in a panic, not realizing it had been what caused her to change. This repeated triggering of the object's anomalous effects led to her untimely death, an event that had to be wiped from the minds of her students by the Foundation, using the careful application of Class B amnestics. For now, SCP-1579 is kept in a secure, sterile environment at a Foundation storage warehouse, where personnel are not permitted to make any contact with it. So there's no need to worry about accidentally running into SCP-1579 in the wild. Although, there are always plenty of other things to worry about while out on a hike through the forest. Things that could be right behind you. Now check out SCP-173 the Sculpture and SCP-1897 Human Domestication Society for more.